Hi parents, I wanted to use this opportunity to create a little parent academy so that you can better understand the vocabulary that we've been using with your kids and they know, and what the strategies they've been using, as I've heard a lot of comments about how they're bringing these strategies home and using them, which I love. So hopefully you can support your student by using the same vocabulary and reinforcing the same strategies as they continue to work. So the first thing I want to talk about is the 6 syllable types. That is the first thing we learn, and it's a great strategy to chunk larger words into smaller, more manageable pieces. It also kind of creates the entire code of language. So I will be posting this handout about the 6 syllable types for you to be able to refer back to. And the elementary students are primarily working with our closed syllable types. We did a little bit of vowel team, and we are working on Magic E. The silent E syllable types. My older students know all 6 syllable types, or are quickly moving to all 6 syllable types to work on words. So let's talk about what these mean. So the first syllable type we work on is the closed syllable type. And what that means, let's get a really simple word here, is when we look at the pattern of consonants and vowels in our word, the vowel is closed in by a consonant, and consonants are closed sounds. Your mouth has to be closed. The sound is blocked by your tongue, teeth, or lips, as your children will recite to you. So the consonant is created by a closed sound, blocking in our vowel, so we consider this a closed syllable word. So when we have a longer word, like picnic, we look at our vowels. We see that we are closed in at the end, so this is a closed syllable word. But we can also, the vowel pattern of VCCV, we typically split between the consonants, and so we have 2 syllables in this word because every syllable has to have a vowel. This syllable is also a closed syllable because the vowel is closed in, and I said this syllable is a closed syllable. So this is a closed syllable word because both its syllables are closed. And this allows your child to break down words into chunks and attack one syllable at a time by recognizing these. The other kind of difficultly named syllable type is the open syllable. So this is like the word hi. When we have hi, the consonant and the vowel is left open. It's not closed in. So it's at the end of the syllable, and it says the long sound, I. So that is an open syllable. A longer one, let me get an example of. In this word raven, we can see that the vowel is A and E. So we know it has 2 syllables because they're not working together in any way. Even though it's vowel, consonant, vowel, E, it's not a silent E pattern. So I teach the kids to be careful looking out for those patterns that aren't being used as patterns. But we see that 2 vowels are split by 1 consonant. It could be split on either side of this consonant. The most common way to split a vowel, consonant, vowel is on the front side of the consonant. So this creates an open syllable word, and this is a closed syllable. So this word has both open and closed syllables in it. We know that open syllable says its name, A, ray, and then a closed syllable says short sound, ven, raven. And so a student is able to visually code if they don't need to physically code and chunk this word into parts. The other syllable types are pretty easily named. There's the vowel team, like in Peel, the 2 vowels are creating 1 sound. The silent E is one that the students commonly know. Bossy R is in the word urch. The E and R are creating 1 sound, and so that's a syllable type. Vowel team, are controlled. And the last syllable type we haven't talked about is called, goes by many names. We call it the final stable syllable because it's always in the final position. It's always spelled the same way. And it kind of has its own rules. Some people will call it consonant LE. This is only one kind of the syllable. So if we have the word like kettle, then we have our vowel here. We see that we have our consonant LE pattern there. And so that's where the syllable division happens. We have a closed syllable beginning part and our toll part at the end, and our final stable syllable. Final stable syllable also includes parts like shun, edge, those pieces at the end that we attach and are always kind of their same groupings. All right, now that we know about the syllable types, and don't worry, you don't have to memorize all that, but just having an understanding of what your children are looking at will help. Now that we understand the syllable types, we can look at the different blending strategies students will use within those syllable types, especially for the youngest learners. So when we have a word to put together, there are several strategies that your child can use to blend it. So starting with a very simple word, we can say all the sounds slowly and say them fast. Cat, and put them together. Some kids find that tricky and they need to sing it. Cat, to hear all the sounds. This is something called additive blending. They're taking one sound at a time and adding it. That is a useful blending strategy and one commonly used, but can make it difficult when we come upon chunks in words later in the word, and then they're holding this sounds in their memory and trying to figure out new information, and it becomes a lot. So the strategy that I'm teaching students, actually put that back still, is called onset and rhyme chunking. So the rhyme is the end of the word from the vowel, right? So from the vowel to the end, just like poetry rhyming, this word rhymes with at. And so I tell when we're looking at our syllable types, we're looking at the vowels anyway to figure out what type of word it is and what the vowel will say. So since they're already looking at the vowel, then they just take from the vowel to the end and figure out the rhyme. At. Now we're going to rhyme with at by adding the beginning. At. And this beginning part is called the onset. So this is onset rhyme blending. Let me show you one way that is helpful for your students. This is a word that's kind of challenging for some of my readers. And it is challenging because when you're holding in your memory and in your memory, and then you get to a chunk where, and getting your mouth to do the right operations in the right order, especially if we have a plural here. And then we've got three, we got to figure out where our mouth's going to go. So this onset rhyme blending is super helpful with this because, again, we look at our vowel, decide what it's going to say based on the syllable type. This one's a closed syllable because C and T are closed, and so our vowel is short. And then we can take from the vowel to the end, and we can really focus on this blend first, this chunk first. And we can go and make sure we get those in the right order. Add the rhyme, act. Now we have one piece of information to hold in our head as we attach the onset. And that makes it a lot easier to attack the hardest part of the words first and then build it together. Act, fact. And that's additive blending, which is a great strategy for your students. All right, the last part of this video that I would like to show y'all is that how to take this to a harder word. So you might run across this word and a lot of kids will be like, yeah, no, just gonna stop reading, or see sub and keep going from there and just guess. But we want to teach them to chunk it up into parts. So the first thing we do is we look for parts we know. First of all, we know that ed makes this word a past tense, so we're going to box that off as a morpheme, a part that carries meaning because it changes it to whatever this is to the past. We're going to look at our vowels, and while we're looking at our vowels and our parts, we might see that this chunk sub is a really common, it's also a morpheme, but it's also a common known chunk. So we got that under control. If we didn't, we could easily see that we have consonants in between our vowels. Decide where to split it. F and R. R is usually a pretty sticky letter, so those might stay together and split it there. So even if we don't recognize that chunk, we can kind of play with it and find where the likely split would be. And so then we can see that we have sub, which is a closed syllable. We can look at this syllable and then we can employ our blending skills. We can figure out our rhyme first, our act, and then come back to our onset and figure out that blend. Act. Subtracted. And then that allows us to chunk up a very large word. I hope these vocabulary words and these strategies help you in order to communicate better with your child as you help them chunk words into the syllable parts, think about the vowels, and kind of attack the hardest part of the word first by breaking it down to focus on.